What's happening, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Phightin Words. Anthony SanFilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. Anthony, Phillies get 2 out of 3 over the weekend against a good Guardians team in Cleveland. 5th straight series win. They're 24-16. They're on a 97 win pace. They've got Babe Ruth hit in the middle of the lineup. The starting rotation's been flat out awesome. And I actually even have some numbers here that are probably going to make you blink twice when we talk about this bullpen. It's all good in Phillies land this morning. And now they come back home and they have the red-hot St. Louis Cardinals, who are now game out in the NL Central behind the Cubs all of a sudden, out of nowhere. Fun times in Phillies land right now, man.
Unbelievable pitching this weekend. Well, Saturday and Sunday for sure. Look, I thought Cleveland would take 2 out of 3 in this series. I did not have as much confidence that Ranger Suarez will put together the game that he put together on Saturday, and he proved me wrong. Like that was a hell of an effort by Ranger on Saturday, and I think that's where this weekend conversation has to start with this series, because I mean, yeah, there's other things to discuss. There were other things that came up over the weekend, but Ranger shoving 7 innings the way he did was really unbelievable and unexpected. And what a sign that is for the Phillies, because now, holy cow, like it doesn't, it's like you keep saying, you look at who the Phillies are going to trot out one game to the next, to the next, to the next as a starting pitcher, and there is no break. If you're the opposing team,
if you're an opposing team and you're looking at the probables, we got the Phils next week. Who we got? Oh, we have Luzardo. Oh, we have Wheeler. Oh, we have Sanchez. Oh, wait, Suarez. He's back. Oh, it's tough. It's tough, and that's the reason why, as you consider all of the flaws or deficiencies or whatever you want to call them, concerns, things that give you anxiety about this team, make you question it, worry about it. I think it's all fair game, but for me, it always comes back to the starting rotation, and you just feel like they're going to have an opportunity to win every single night, and because of that, 95 wins, I think is realistic without waving pom-poms.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Ryan's quick to point out, and I'm okay being with this, that I'm on a losing streak, that I got the last 2 series wrong. I originally said they would win 2 out of 3 against Tampa. They swept. I said they would lose 2 out of 3 against Cleveland. They won 2 out of 3. So hey, I'm okay if I'm wrong and they're winning more games, right?
You're okay. I think you'll be forgiven if that's the case. You know what's really interesting, and you said it. It's not that Suarez was dialed in or that he was efficient or that he held a good offense scoreless. The thing I look at more than anything else is that he gets through 7 innings in his second start back. And just for some context here, he had not completed 7 full innings since May 21st against the Rangers last season. So it had almost been an entire calendar year since he had pitched that deep into the game. And, we talked last week, is he destined for more of that hybrid bullpen role in time? Maybe is it a 6-man rotation where he's able to slot in and exist because of that? Maybe. But, for one night here, you go, oh, yeah, he's actually pretty good too. And it served notice. It served as a reminder that at his best, he can slot in as a number 2, number 3 type of starting pitcher. And I don't know what it means 2 months from now, and I don't know what it means 4 months from now. I know we've talked about it a little bit, and I don't want to spend too much time doing that this morning, but you just sit back and go, well, that's an interesting piece. If this is what we're going to get, even if some version of this, it changes the math. It changes the way that you look at this picture of their pitching staff.
Yeah, and here's the question I have, Bob. Has the fact that the Phillies have allowed this kind of conversation about the rotation and 6-man and Painter's coming and great depth and all this stuff, have they in essence created a little internal competition that is going to light some fires under these guys a little bit? I mean, we've seen it out of Taijuan Walker this year. We've seen it now for a start out of Ranger Suarez. They know what's coming. They've been asked the questions about going into the bullpen and would they accept the bullpen role. Obviously, they want to be starters and they want to pitch to the best of their ability. Having that internal competition, has that kind of impacted things a little bit?
It could. You hear staffs when things are going well, they all compete with one another. They want to ride the momentum of one another. Something that you hear them say all the time. I don't know if that's what's going on here, but I think in this case it's unique because you are pitching for jobs. It's not just, well, I want to one up that guy, or I want to show him that I can do what he did. At some point, this is going to be 5 guys. And it's probably going to be the best 5 guys. And if you right now are on the fringe of that, then you've got to perform. And so I think these are all professional dudes. I think that they all go about it the right way. So is it truly changing their mindset start to start? I don't know, but it's a really good problem to have. Now, I will say, I think there's been a lot of talk about what does this look like. We touched on it Friday. What does it look like if Painter comes up in June or July? And what happens if Walker continues to throw the ball well and Suarez is pretty good? What do? All I would say is this. You have Zack Wheeler, who's going to turn 35 in a couple weeks, who's thrown almost 200 innings a year in the regular season over the last 4 years, and count the postseason appearances. Aaron Nola, I believe, turns 32 or 33 in a couple weeks as well. Same thing. He's about 200 a year plus playoffs. Jesus Luzardo's only thrown over 150 innings once in his entire career. It's part of the reason I think the Phillies were able to land him because of durability concerns. So things have a way of working themselves out. And at the very least right now, what you do know is that they can probably survive an injury or maybe even two to certain guys in the short term if that's the case. And there are not many teams in baseball that can say the same, where if their number 1 or number 2 guy goes down for a month, holy smokes, it's going to be a disaster. The Phillies have some options. And I think if everything continues as is going towards the deadline, I don't know who it is. I don't know how they do it. I think they will experiment with a 6-man at some point, but I have to imagine they're going to use the surplus that they have in solving some of their pitching holes. It's just the way it's going to have to be. Yeah. They're not just going to go Walker in the bullpen, 6-man, like for the entire season. Like they're going to have to say, all right, we have some soft spots in this bullpen. We either need to go outbound and bring in a guy, or we need one of these pieces to go out and solve that problem. There's no way. It's an inevitability that it happens. Now, how it happens, that's what's going to be truly compelling.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's compelling is the right word, because I'm not sure how it's going to break down. I'm not sure how it's going to work out. But it's an interesting situation to be in. I've never seen a situation like this, really, when you think about it. I mean, most teams are usually struggling to find a number 5 guy.
Yeah.
Or, and the Phillies right now have 6 that have pitched well, and their top prospect is coming soon, who's the 7th. Yeah, it's really kind of a unique situation, and I'm going to be curious to see how they end up playing it out. But man, Ranger Suarez did a heck of a job against a good Cleveland team.
And the Suarez thing is, I don't want to overreact to one start, but I just think it's significant in that I know that he is somebody that the fans respect, the organization respects, the teammates love, and we go, well, Ranger Suarez, he's a damn good arm, and I think he is, but the reality is that he threw 36 2/3 innings in the second half of last season to a 5.65 ERA. And the reality is he had not gone 6 innings in a game and allowed 2 runs or fewer since June 25th against the Tigers last year. So there is, with him more than anyone, given what he had gone through, the injury situation, the slow start to the year, it was like, I need to see it. Show me that you can do that again, because it's been a year since I've seen you go out and be that kind of guy for this team. And so for him to do it, it kind of makes you go, oh, okay, well, that's there now. And so we can check that box. Now, are we going to get it consistently? I don't know. Is he going to slot in as a middle of the rotation guy? I don't know. Is he a guy that's going to be a 2-inning reliever in important spots? Maybe. But what that start showed Saturday night was that he has it in him still. I think it's important for him to see that. I think it's important for the team to see it. And that is the big takeaway of the weekend for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no question that was the highlight for me. I mean, I know last night's game, is nip tuck the whole way, and Wheeler gives you a classic Wheeler game. And that was pretty awesome on national television as well. And Schwarber, we're going to talk about him a little bit too. He's unbelievable right now.
Actually, I want to go right to him. That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. But but just to finish that, the point is that no matter, even with that yesterday, Ranger Suarez was still the key takeaway to the weekend. There's no question in my mind. But let's dive into it. Let's dive into Kyle Schwarber, because we also have a question coming up from one of our people watching us here on the show live about Kyle Schwarber. We'll get to that in a minute.
So compelling is probably the word of the day here, and his season has become very compelling. He was the star of the show last night, just not on field, but the entire broadcast, I felt like it was just about Kyle Schwarber, quite honestly. We're at a point now, we're a quarter of the way through the season, and I know that that's not a huge sample of games, but it's also not taking a 9-game stretch in the middle of the season and extrapolating it out over 162. This is a real piece of the season now, and we're at a point now 40 games through it where he is, if you just look at his 162 projection, he's on pace to score 117 runs, have 158 hits, 57 home runs, 130 runs driven in, 117 walks. I mean, this is crazy what we've seen out of him. OPS sitting almost right at 1,000. He's doing everything for this team. And it goes without saying, he's been phenomenal. Great. But in a way, like, you can't watch what he's doing. You certainly can enjoy it, but you can't watch what he's doing without being like, what's going to happen this offseason? How are they going to do this? Because I don't think that there's a person in this city or that works for the Phillies that would say, we'll be better next year without Kyle Schwarber. You know, like, I think everyone's like, you've got to find a way to get a deal done with this guy. But he's 32 years old. He's not going to play the field unless it's a handful of games and left, and we know what that looks like. What do you do? Is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? Is it 20 million? Is it 27 million a year? Like, what does this look like? And do you think that the Phillies are going to do it?
And that was Chris's question. Do you see the Phillies cutting a deal with Kyle Schwarber before the end of the season, or will he be allowed to test the free agent market? And it's not about will he be allowed to test the free agent market. It's, does Kyle Schwarber want to test the free agent market? And that's really what it comes down to, Chris, in this question, because, you know, Schwarber right now through 40 games is arguably the National League MVP. I mean, really, when you look at it, I'm not a big supporter of MVPs being designated hitters. This was my big push against Ohtani last year, because hitters are just hitters. Sometimes, in my mind, you have to do it in the field as well. But statistically, he's doing things that nobody else in the National League is doing right now.
Yeah, by the way, just in terms of the betting odds, you have Ohtani is the leader. No surprise there. Kyle Tucker, Tatis Jr., Pete Alonso, Corbin Carroll, Freddie Freeman, Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Pete Crow Armstrong, Jackson Merrill, Kyle Schwarber. It's
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's only a couple of guys on that list that are even in the conversation.
Some of it's just about pedigree and projection too.
Yeah, and it's also people who like to bet names.
Yeah,
like Soto right now. Is Soto put up MVP numbers? No, but he's on the list ahead of Schwarber, right? You know, so it's simple. That's what that is.
Well, I mean, there are some guys on that list. I mean, certainly Tucker, Alonso, Freeman. I mean, yeah. To your point, though, he is on the short list. I agree.
He's certainly on the short. I mean, but really, when you look at it and you say most valuable player, take Kyle Schwarber off the Phillies, and how much does it hurt the Phillies? You take Ohtani off the Dodgers right now, they still got Freddie Freeman having the year that he's having, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, a couple of these guys, you take them off their team, it's like, okay, yeah, it probably it dings them. Nothing dings more than Schwarber off the Phillies, because their offense is non-existent without Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, I know this isn't how wins above replacement works, but if you figure the Phillies this morning are 24-16, I mean, 3-4 games probably last night.
That makes them a 500 team.
Yeah, I mean they're probably right on a game above, a game below. You know,
yeah, that's what it does. It makes them a 500 team. And you know, and as Amy says, where would they be without him this year? Right? I mean, 100%. They would be a mediocre at best team without Kyle Schwarber. So anyway, so to get back to the contract thing, Look, if you're Kyle Schwarber, and think about this, I mean, this was the same thing with when Nola was a free agent. They let him hit free agency, and then they brought him back, and they ended up re-signing him. It's probably worth it for Schwarber, in his mind and his agent's mind, to get to the end of the season, see what the landscape is, and then you come back to the Phillies and say, okay, I love it here. I want to be here. Here's what's out there. Here's what we're getting. Can you guys match it or give me something similar, and then I'll stay? And
are you of the opinion that he loves it here?
I do. I do think he wants to win here. I do think that there's something about him wanting to get this done in Philadelphia. I do get that sense. Can the Phillies get it done beforehand? Certainly. But what I think they would have to do is I think they would have to negotiate against themselves in a lot of ways.
Right.
To do that. And if they're willing to do that and willing to overpay, then I think that they can get it done before the end of the season. But otherwise, I think that he's going to make it to the offseason, get the sense of what he could get, and then the Phillies will be a player in that and maybe have an opportunity that other teams don't have because of the familiarity. But I think that's what it gets to.
So let's table whether or not the Phillies are the team that does the deal. What is the deal going to look like? I mean, how would you value this player? Now, we know that he is susceptible to cold spells, and we've seen June Schwarber, and we've done this whole thing before, but we haven't seen it at this early in the season. We have not seen it for this prolonged of a stretch. This feels different. Are the numbers going to come down a little bit? Like, yeah. I mean, if you said to me right now, is he going to hit over under 55 home runs? I'd take the under. I think maybe he can get to 50. I think that's realistic. He has a shot at that if he stays healthy. Do I think the batting average comes down a little bit? Maybe a little bit. Like, do I think he ends up with 157 hits like he's on pace for? Maybe not. But is he a 100 walk guy? Is he a guy that's going to drive in 100 runs? Like, yeah. So I think that even with those cold stretches baked into what happens this season over the final 100 and whatever it is, 22 games, you kind of reasonably know what these numbers might look like. So what is it 3? Is it 4 years? Do you go extra years and then dilute the yearly money in order to counteract that a little bit? Do you pay this guy who just made $20 million a year over 4? Now he's just older. He's a little bit better. Like, the stats look a little bit better here now. Do you take money off because he's older? Do you add money on because the numbers have been more prolific and what he means to the team? Like, how do you do it? Or do you just hand him the same contract again? Be like, does 480 get it done again? Like, what does it?
I think it's 4 and 100.
Yeah.
I think it goes up to 25 a year.
Yeah.
And Russ asks an interesting question here, Bob. He says, here's what he doesn't get. Who's to blame for no deal last offseason? Did Schwarber decide it was free agent or bust? Did Dombrowski think Schwarber might start slow and he'd get a better price? I don't know. I don't necessarily know if you need to point fingers at somebody in this situation. I think it's a matter of.
I have a take on that.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, it's the business of baseball. Sometimes, a team is always going to want to get a team-friendly deal. A player is always going to want to get the best possible deal for the player, and it's a matter of finding that middle ground that both are comfortable with. And maybe they didn't quite get to the comfortable number, and Schwarber's betting on himself a little bit, and the Phillies are like, all right, prove it to us, and then we'll get there. You know what I'm saying? I that's kind of how I see it. I don't think it's anything that you point a finger or blame either way, one way.
Yeah, and I would imagine it probably hasn't been a contentious conversation to this point. It's here's where you're at. Okay, all right, we hear you. This is where we're at. We'll figure it out. Like we'll let it play out. My thing is, I think the Phillies are deathly afraid of getting locked into older players, declining players. I think that they really value some flexibility and the ability to sort of get a fresh start after this season. I think that they're very strategically looking at next year saying, we have to be different. We have to be a little bit younger. We might need to be a little bit more athletic. And so when you have Castellanos now on the books again through next season, I don't know that you want to commit to Schwarber earlier than you need to. It's like, let's let this thing play out so that we can keep our flexibility in terms of how we build this roster and how we let this lineup evolve. let's look at what Crawford looks like as an outfield option, or what we might be able to trade Crawford for this summer. Let's look at what Aiden Miller looks like and how he progresses. And like, do we really see him as being a meaningful piece in 26? Like, I think the Phillies have some interesting things going on in a lot of different fronts, and they just don't want to commit earlier than they need to. It's not to say that they won't commit to Kyle Schwarber or that they shouldn't commit to Kyle Schwarber, but I think that they really want to buy as much time as they possibly can to let these variables play out and not get themselves overly tied up and committed to a team on the decline. I think that's a big part of this.
Yeah, and not only that, and just add into it, Bob, look, we've discussed this before. If Walker gives you a good season, it'll be easier to move the last year of his contract.
Yeah.
If Castellanos gives you another consistently decent season, it'll be easier to move the last year of his contract. If you end up moving off of Castellanos and Walker in the offseason for whatever, and even if you have to
you split their salaries, both of them. 10, you get 10 back on Castellanos and 9 back on Walker. It's $19 million.
All of a sudden, that pays for most of 1 year of Kyle Schwarber. Right. I mean, in all honesty, so I think that there are always determining factors, as you're saying, that kind of could get. Let's play this out and see what happens, and then kind of see where we're at the end of the year.
This guy's playing so well right now, and this offense is okay. It's like, if you look at most of the numbers, they're up there in average. They're elite in terms of on base percentage. The slug is like, it's middle of the road, but in general, this is pretty much a top 10 to 12 offense. But I think that most of us that have watched this offense so far this year go, this team needs to upgrade this offense moving forward. And that's with Schwarber putting up these numbers. And I think because of that, you have to leave flexibility in play. Like, you have to give yourself some, I'm not going to use, I'll just say it, like some optionality. Like, you have to let this thing breathe a little bit. Now, all that being said, if Kyle Schwarber and the Phillies huddled up tonight and he said, look, I want $90 million over 4 years, I think the Phillies should do that deal and have a press conference before the game this evening. But I can appreciate, coming off the disappointment of last season, not wanting to be all in, chips to the center, and totally shutting the door on one avenue in involving the lineup.
Yeah, for sure. But I think I talk about another, bit of intrigue and fascinating to see how something plays out. That's certainly something that's going to be, let's see how it plays out. But I mean, if past is prologue with this team, right? They let Real Muto get into the offseason when they re-signed him. They let Nola get into the offseason before they re-signed him. It would not surprise me if they let Schwarber get into the offseason and then re-sign him. Like, I really think that that's a very realistic possibility. And look, I think that they have Dombrowski and Schwarber have a really good relationship. You see it when they talk to each other in the clubhouse. They have that player executive relationship that only certain few guys have. So only enough players have the gravitas to have, and Schwarber's one of those guys. And I think that that's something that you come back to a lot of times and say, hey, listen, I know that this is the way the business works. I'll come back with and make sure you guys get your fair shake, or even the last shake, before I make a final decision.
All right, the thing I want to just pivot to here now is talk a little bit about this pitching, and we've spent a lot of time singing the praises of this starting rotation, and I've recited the numbers, I've tweeted numbers. They're top 5 in pretty much everything. A lot of strikeouts, not a lot of walks. ERA is top 6, 7. They're the only team in baseball starting rotation WAR on Fangraphs over 5. Great. No breaking news there. What's interesting now is this bullpen, and I am going to do something that I actually just criticized a little bit earlier, making the point about Schwarber, which is just taking an arbitrary date and working off of it. It's usually cheap. It's like a cheap way to illustrate a point that doesn't necessarily have a lot of substance in it. And I've done it before, but we see it all the time. Like, well, since May 4th, this guy's hitting 479, and like, that's cool. It's a nice little conversation point, but what does that ultimately mean? So with all that said, looking at this bullpen a little bit, and I think you and I are on the same page in terms of where this bullpen is and how good or not good it is. But interesting to me, if you go back to April 21st, so you're talking about a 3-week sample. This is 3 Mondays ago. Since April 21st, the Phillies bullpen has a 3.36 ERA, which is second in the National League to only the Giants. And in that time, they are third in strikeouts per 9. They are second in strikeout to walk ratio. They're fifth in whip, and they're 10th in batting average against. And those are all MLB-wide numbers. And so bad players, bad units can put together stretches of respectability. But when I give you that and go beyond just ERA and say, like, they're missing bats and they're not walking guys and they're keeping guys off base, is there anything to this? Like, is there anything that you can look at and say, all right, maybe there's more here than we as a media group, fan base, observers of baseball are giving this bullpen? Like, if you're Dave Dombrowski, do you wake up today and go, it's not so bad, you all overreacted?
I look at it this way, Bob. I think that they since April 21st, let's say that's the day you looked at. I have a feeling it's probably around then when they started to get the guys at the back end a little bit more rest. Because if you remember the first 3
April 21st, by the way, in case you're like, what's April 21st? It was actually the first of the 3 games against the Mets in which they were swept. So that's where this started.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's actually, I didn't think you were going to include those games.
Yeah.
That because you got to remember that's Romano gives up the hits there too. He didn't have that great game up there.
Yeah.
But they really started to level out the usage for Alvarado, Strom, Kerkering, even Romano at that point. And they started to kind of, get a little bit more length out of their starting pitchers. And I think that's helped a little bit too. I don't know. I think it's a situation where, look, with some of these guys, it's probably just a good 3-week run. But with some of these guys, it's probably like, all right, yeah, you know what? They just needed to settle into a role. They needed to get into the season a little bit. I don't think it's as bad as everybody made it out to be, but I also am not going to sit here and put a bunch of cherries on top of the whipped cream and say this is a delicious bullpen as well. Like it's not.
All right, so let's go a little bit deeper here. Right around that time, by the way, so I used April 21st as the line. On April 19th, that was the Jordan Romano meltdown game. 2/3 of an inning against the Marlins, gives up the 6 earned runs. It's a disaster. So he exits that game with a 15.26 ERA. After a scoreless inning last night in Cleveland, he's cut that almost in half, 8.79. This is still clearly hideous, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I feel great about Jordan Romano, but it has been better lately. In fact, over his last 7 games, he has a 1.35 ERA, 6 2/3 innings pitched, has allowed only 5 hits, 1 earned run, walked 2, struck out 7, 1.05 whip. So I agree that the bullpen probably is not as good as it has pitched over the last 21 days. But are we starting to see enough out of Jordan Romano where you feel like, hey, this is the most important spot of the game in which a Phillies reliever is going to face a right-handed batter who succeeds against lefties. Thus, this is our guy. This is our leverage right-hander in a key moment. Is he their best option in this moment as we talk right now? Is that the guy that you feel best about? A guy that has an 8+ ERA?
It's sad to say, but the answer to that is yes.
The answer is absolutely yes. It was a leading question. It's not even close. Like, he's clearly the guy that you feel the best about. And that right there tells you that this bullpen is not good enough. I mean, it's very easy to get to that place. And that's where I come back to it. I'm like, they could run another 3-4 weeks hot, have the 12th best ERA of any bullpen in baseball, and I'd still say yes. But now let's project to October when you have that key moment and Zack Wheeler's at 102 pitches and you've got a righty coming up and you feel like he's lost it and you need to end an inning, shut it down. That's still not the guy that I feel great about. I'm cool and I have to be. I'm cool seeing if over time that continues to develop. But, man, I would probably need to see 2 more months of that out of Jordan Romano before I got to that point.
Yeah, but here's another thing, Bob. Like, you could even go back a little bit further. So I never like doing this, but I'm going to just for this case with Romano. I never like taking a game out of the equation. It happened, right?
You just erase that game where he gave up the 6 runs.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, it goes back even further, and now you're looking at more than a month. If you go back to April 10th, he's only allowed 1 earned run in his last 11 appearances, or 10. It would be 10 because you take the 1 game out. So it would be 1 earned run in 10 appearances. Like, that's pretty good. For 6 hits in 10 appearances, that's pretty good. 2 walks in 10 appearances. It's pretty good. So you take that 1 game out, and I don't normally like doing that. But for relievers, I think it's a little bit more acceptable to do that, because 1 really bad outing can absolutely obliterate your numbers if you're a relief pitcher, because it's really a small sample of innings. But if you take that 1 outing out, he's actually been pretty darn good for a month. Yeah. I don't know. I watch him pitch, and I still think the slider, he throws too many spinners up there, and I think they're going to hurt him at some point.
Yeah, I still agree with that.
Yeah, too. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I think that's still, my eyes are telling me something different than the numbers are telling me. But to his credit, he's been mostly effective in his over the last month.
All right, so believe it or not, this is not a totally random conversation as I jump around. I promise that I'll bring this all together.
Okay.
So we're saying that Jordan Romano in this moment is trending upward. We feel better about him, and we see that, look, there's obviously something here. He can get outs in key situations at times, and maybe he can do it with a little bit more consistency over a prolonged amount of time. That trust will continue to build. Great. Where do you think that the Phillies are at with Orion Kerkering in this moment? Do you believe that they feel like this is an elite arm, that they will get back to being a guy that they will go to in important spots without hesitation? Or do you think now, over parts of 3 seasons, and I know he's still very young, and I know his arm is very live, do you think that they have to evaluate him in the here and now and say, not that necessarily he can't be this guy, but for what he is in 2025 on May 12th, he just isn't quite what we had hoped he'd be, and we cannot afford to project that he's going to be that 5 months from now?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Bob. I think that they are not sure what they want to do with Kerkering at this point. Like, I thought it was really telling that his last appearance was in a 6-0 game in the 9th inning. That they were down 6-0. Like, all right, put Kerkering in there. That's usually a spot you go to your Joe Rosses of the world, or your Carlos Hernandezes of the world, and instead they went to Orion Kerkering. I don't know, and it was fine. I mean, look, he pitched that 1 inning, he gave up a hit, and he had a strikeout, no runs. Okay, great, but it's a little bit perplexing, and he came in early in a game against in that wild game against Arizona a week ago Sunday when they lost 11-9, but they were down 7-1. Yeah. He's the guy that they brought in first when they pulled Ranger out in the 4th inning. And that's a weird spot for Orion Kerkering, right? So what does that tell you that their confidence level is in him, that they're putting him in these situations when they're very low leverage situations that really don't matter?
Yeah, it's sort of like the try to pitch through it, try to throw through it without going down. It's like, let's really just pick our spots and see if we can make improvements appearance to appearance, and then maybe build you back up. It feels like that's sort of where they're at with him. So then the evaluation of Philly's right-handed relievers, and let's table Taijuan Walker for a minute, because I don't know what that really means yet. I mean, seriously, I'm not.
You're right.
Not saying that he's not an important part of the equation. I'm not trying to diminish what he could be in this, but I just don't know, right? Like, I don't quite know what that looks like yet. I want to see how the Phillies use him before I determine what I think he might be.
Well, I thought that they thought that they were going to have to use him on Saturday, and then Suarez went out and did what he did. It's like, well, we don't need Taiwan tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of want to see how his role develops, because I can't make any judgments about Taiwan Walker because he threw 3 innings against the Rays in a 6-7-0 game last week. I don't know how he factors into this, because I don't know that they know how he factors into this.
Yeah.
So Ross, functional. He can eat up a couple innings. He's a competitive arm, but he's not a guy that you're going to feel good about late in games, key spots. Let's just be honest about this. Hernandez came in at an interesting spot Thursday night when they swept the Rays. He gets 2 key outs, 2 runners on, 1 out, gets a pair of strikeouts. I don't think that they feel super confident in him in key spots. Kerkering kind of feels like an on-the-fly mini reclamation project here on the go. Romano's trying to pitch his way under an 8 ERA in this moment and is on his way to doing it, but listen to the sentence I just said. So we know that they really are light in terms of guys being able to hammer down important outs from the right side and bullpen. Okay. Now let me take you to the outfield. And we went through Max Kepler mania last week when he was in the middle of a little heater. Now you look up this morning and okay, he's hitting 233 with a 731 OPS. And that's not great. And you look at his breakdown, his splits, it's actually kind of interesting. Against righties, he's hitting 233. Against lefties, he's hitting 231. It's not like he's crushing righties, but then he's totally underwhelming against lefties. The thing is, though, he's got a 250 on base percentage against left-handers. He's 6 for 26 with 8 strikeouts. All of this is to say exactly what we've known all along, which is that they don't have a solution to hit left-handed pitching. And then I want to slot over to center field. I'm not going to get on here today after Johan Rojas goes 0 for 4 and strikes out 3 times, and he's hitting, 288 now. He's cooling off a little bit. You look at his last 7 or 8 games, I think he's under 250. Fine. I'm not trying to use that stretch to accentuate the point. The reality is that he is whatever he is, he's got his limitations. Brandon Marsh is 7 for 15 since coming back. I think he has 3 doubles. Swinging the bat a little bit better, but we all know that he cannot hit left-handed pitching. He's 3 for 14 against lefties this season, 8 strikeouts. So in this moment, you feel okay about Max Kepler. You feel okay about what this tandem in center field is giving the Phillies. Here's what I keep coming back to. If Brandon Marsh and Max Kepler are both in the game against a right-handed pitcher, you probably feel okay about that. Where I am oh my God, in terms of what a playoff series might look like, is if you start both of them against a righty, do you feel good enough about Johan Rojas to pinch hit Brandon Marsh or Max Kepler in a key spot against a lefty? And the answer to this is clearly no.
Right.
And I know that Edmundo Sosa figures into this, or can figure it into it, in the way that you can go let him run around left field for an inning or 2 if you have to. But we all know that that's not really a solution. So the Phillies have 2 glaring needs here. And this is not new information. This is not breaking news. But I'm going to bring it to you like this. 1, do you agree with my assessment of their outfield situation? And then off of that, what is the most dire need that this team has in order to become what it probably can be? Because, here you go. This is a team on a 97-win pace. It is not a perfect team. But in the grand scheme of Phillies history, there are very few teams that you can look at and say, when it's all said and done, they're going to be better than the 25 Phillies.
Well, this becomes a question that Derek Allen, it's the same question Derek Allen is asking us here on YouTube. It says, what injects the most juice into this team at the trade deadline? Another bat, outfield defensive help, or a new shutdown bullpen piece? And the answer can be both. Right?
But okay. So again, though, here's the thing. Can you survive? Which one of these things can you survive without? Let me ask it to you in a totally opposite way. Not optimal peak juice energy, but what's the one thing that if they don't address it, they could possibly find their way through it?
The outfield.
Yeah.
And I say that only because you have multiple mediocre options and you hope that one of them hits. Whereas the bullpen, you cannot survive a bad bullpen in the playoffs.
Totally agree. The Phillies will not make a run in the postseason if they do not address the bullpen. Now, I believe, with that said, that they have an issue in the outfield, and they must address this issue. But when you look at how this team is constructed right now, how many pieces on the major league roster make sense as a possible trade candidate? Like right now, who are the names? I have a list, but I think you'll match up with me. Who are the guys on this current major league roster that could be involved in a trade at the deadline?
You're the 2 center fielders.
Yes.
And maybe guys in the bullpen.
It's a short list.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, you go like Kepler is not a really great fit for this particular lineup, which is what we've known all along. Could you think about it? Would they answer a call on Nick Castellanos? I don't care what they say. They have to. They would have to.
Sure.
Taijuan Walker, like maybe. I doubt it. We talked about this last Friday. The point is that there aren't many candidates. It's the 2 center fielders.
Well, yeah, but I guess the argument I would make for guys in the bullpen is that they did this last year. Right. Yeah. They traded guys out of the bullpen. They traded Dominguez and Soto out of the bullpen.
I mean, those guys at least had some pedigree. Like who?
Yeah, well, I hear you, but you can always make room, right? You can always look. Can you trade? Let's say Romano keeps going well. Is he a guy? Is Kerkering a guy that you could put into a trade?
Yeah, if you're a bad team, do you say like we'll fix him? We have him under team control. He's young. Like that's a guy we'll take a shot on. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like those are the things. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I don't think the Phillies would do that. I don't think the Phillies would trade Kerkering. But I'm just saying like you could conceivably do that.
Okay, so the answer though is not many. Like there's not a lot of options, at least seemingly a lot of options at the major league level. Then you dive into the minor leagues. So. Painter's not going anywhere. Miller likely not going anywhere. Crawford, maybe with the right phone call, maybe. I just don't see this team like. I think where I'm ultimately trending with this though is I don't see this team making 2 huge trades of consequence. Like I don't think they have enough pieces to do it. Unless, and I know you wrote about it, and I talked about it last week a little bit. Mick Abel is becoming interesting again, and he was really good again this past weekend. And it looks like he might be figuring it out. So does a team get high on him and say like, all right, we'll give you something of significance for Mick Abel or Mick Abel in a package? Maybe. I think what happens here, it's going to be really fascinating to watch when you get to July. Last year, they didn't really make a splash move. And I think that team, in hindsight, desperately needed new energy, a little bit of a kick in the ass. And I kind of feel like that they'll probably be in the same spot again this year. Like, if they weren't motivated after 22 in the World Series, and they weren't motivated after getting bounced by the Diamondbacks, then getting eliminated by the Mets in 24 is going to be the intangible or the motivator in and of itself that pushes this team over the top. Like, you cannot rely on like, well, this time we're pissed and we owe you one. Like, we've done that before. So when you get to the deadline this time, to me, the one thing that you can do differently for a very good team is give it somebody that walks through the clubhouse door, and these guys are looking at each other going like, all right, these guys mean business up top. Let's fucking go. I really and I know that that's like a little bit narrative driven and a little bit like fanboyish probably of me to suggest, but I think there's something to that. I really do believe that as a player, you go through the slog of a season, you got a good ball club here, and pick your 90 wins, 90, 93, 96. I really think that you get to the deadline in the front office saying, like, this time we're not going to make the same mistake. We're going to go get it. I think that could have a really big impact on a team like this with so many veteran guys.
And I agree with you. And I'll give you a real world example of this, although it didn't play out this way, but it was certainly in the moment something that was getting the team fired up. So I'm going to take you back when they acquired Michael Lorenzen at the deadline.
Hell right? Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Does say acquire Michael Lorenzen at the deadline. And then in his second start as a Philly, throws the no-hitter. We walked into that clubhouse and Dombrowski's in there doing the whole, toast to him and everything else. And all the players start going, great signing, Dave. Great trade, Dave. What a way to go, Dave. Like they weren't just, they were partially kind of like, joking with Dave, but they were saying it out loud in front of the media. Like that was a thing that was resonating with that team at that moment. You go and get a player who can make your team a championship team. They're going to feel it in that clubhouse. And then it's going to add a little morale boost. No question about it. No question about it. And I'll throw this at you. And this one is not a real world example, but it's got to be what that team is feeling. If you and I can sit here as a couple of jamokes and identify that they need these things, that these are the deficiencies of this team, what do you think the guys that are playing on this team are thinking? They have to know. They have to see the same thing we're seeing. They're not going to sit there and just be, put the blinders on and go, you guys don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like they see it too. And so like, if that's not fixed, I think it's more of a letdown for them. Yeah. Because they're like, we're out there busting our ass and we feel like we're close and we just need that one little extra thing and our team's not giving it to us. And I think it's a deflator. So I think they see it and I think it does help and I think they'll get it.
So let's tie this back into my premise earlier, which is that the Phillies were trying to maintain flexibility in their future roster construction for as long as they possibly could, because this season was sort of like a fork in the road moment. Like I think that the Phillies probably internally had to have some doubts about what this current group might look like this year, how they'd respond, how they'd start, where they'd be in the standings. Is being on a 97 win pace one of the possible outcomes? Probably, but I don't know. I mean, maybe they were looking at it going like, we might struggle. This offense can decline. Let's just wait and see how it goes. I don't think that's what they did last offseason. I'm sure that they explored things and they were met with dead ends. And then for one reason or other, they really couldn't change the team the way that they probably would have liked to. But do you just say, all right, let's not overreact in the moment. Look at this rotation. Look at some of the pieces we have. There's no way that we won't be competitive. We can revisit this as the season starts to unfold. Like, do you kind of think that maybe that there were things they could have done and they just said, rather than doing these things and boxing ourselves in, let's just wait and see how things play out once we get towards July?
Yeah, I mean, I never have a problem going in. If you're a good team going into a season with a hole or two that that you can fill later, because you could sit there and go, okay, let's see how it plays out. Who knows? Maybe somebody does something unexpected and it no longer becomes a hole for us. And, and so you give those guys a chance. You give those guys the opportunity. You could find it in every season that the Phillies have had. I mean, go back to starting a year with no center fielder, like I think Adam Hazley and Odubel Herrera. And who was the third guy that they were trotting out there that year? I remember
Roman Quinn still around at that point.
Might have been Roman Quinn or whatever. And they were like, all right, and we traded for Brandon Marsh.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so, but they knew it was a hole going into the 22 season. Right. And then they kind of fixed it at the deadline. They probably didn't think Didi Gregorius was as much of a hole. And then when he became a hole, it was like, all right, well, we got to call up Bryson Stott. And that's what they did. So like, you plug the holes when you need to plug them. And it's okay to kind of go into it. You don't have to have, and you're right, you could box yourself in if you fill what you determine is every need going into a season. And then if something doesn't work out, it's like, we've already expended all of our capital to get what we needed to get or what we thought we needed to get at the beginning of the year, and it didn't work. Now what do we do?
Yeah, I just look at it and go, well, are they going to do both? Like, because what I want them to do is go out and get a real right-handed hitting outfielder. And I want them to go out and get a lights out bullpen piece that can get out right-handed hitters. Like, that's what I want them to do.
Let me throw something else at you. So it's related to this. So they, was it last week, had Kepler move over to play center field. It's a position he's played in the past. He's fine out there. He's not a stalwart by any stretch of the imagination, but he can play it if needed. Is it any worse to have Max Kepler in center field defensively than Brandon Marsh in center field defensively?
Probably not.
And if so,
maybe marginally.
Right. If it's a comparable, does the right-handed hitting outfielder have to be a center fielder?
No, it doesn't. That's the thing. And that's why I brought up Kepler before I talked about the center field fit. It's because you have that left-handed vulnerability, or, against left-handed pitching, that vulnerability in left field. That's why I look at center field and say, like, you've got to add of those three guys that can patrol around between the corner outfield spot and center field. One of them has to be able to be a legit right-handed bat. And I don't care if the guy stands in left field or stands in center field or rotates around. Like, I just need a bat out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. You need an outfield bat.
Who has more juice on the trade market? Because I'm what I do believe, like, hot take time. I don't think in August that Crawford, Rojas, and Marsh will all be here. I think someone's going.
I agree with you.
So, I think Crawford of the three probably has the most trade value.
Yes.
But then between Rojas and Marsh, I guess, who do you think has the most value, and who do you think they'd prefer to keep?
I don't know.
I wonder how the Phillies in this moment look at Brandon Marsh and Johan Rojas side by side. I think the fans are actually probably mostly leaning Rojas because of the defensive capability, the ability to make plays, and neither of them are so good at the plate that you really. I think Rojas might have more. I don't know. I'm almost like starting to talk myself into Rojas maybe having more value to other teams because of the age and because of the overall physical capability.
Maybe, but
I don't think it's high in either case.
Yes, I was just about to say I don't think it's a lot of value. I think if you had to pick, if you're another team and you're given that option, hey, you can have one of Marsh or Rojas. I would say of the other 29 other teams in the league, slightly more than half would pick Rojas over Marsh.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's where my head's at this morning, because I go, all right, this team has proven now through a quarter of the season that it has its issues, and we will do a show very soon again where we're like, oh my God, like what is this team doing? What are these guys doing? But today I'm like, all right, you've proven to yourself a month and a half into the season that you are what we kind of thought you were, which is a good team. One that probably needs some upgrades. So how are you going to do it? And those upgrades, to me, or the need to make those upgrades, become magnified because they're actually playing well. If this team was, just twisting in the wind and 2 games under 500, I'd say don't do anything. Sell. Let's turn the page. That's where I would be at.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Here, let me look into my crystal ball, because I don't know what the Phillies are going to do in this upcoming series, but I have a crystal ball prediction for you. This morning, Alec Boehm is hitting 248. Okay. He's hitting
climbing
344 in the month of May. He's 11 for his last 32. He is climbing. The days of him hitting like 136 are in the rear view. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that by June 10th, that Alec Boehm is hitting 275 or better. And I'm also going to predict that a lot of people in the city are going to see, Alec Boehm's a good hitter. He's using all fields. It's what they don't have in this lineup and all that stuff. And we're going to be like, he's hitting 330 over his last 36 games, and he saved his season. And I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say he has 11 extra base hits in 200 at bats. This isn't good enough. Trade this guy. Move on. I'm like, as I watch Alec Boehm like dink and dunk his way back to respectability, I'm like, you've got to move on from this.
Didn't he have a hit last night that was 60 miles per hour off the bat?
He is not the solution. I'm not saying that he's going to sink them. I'm not saying that if Alec Boehm hits 275 in this lineup, we'll do the old Rojas thing. If everyone else does their job, he doesn't need to. Like, sure, if Kyle Schwarber hits 65 home runs, you could just subtract 20 of those from the DH spot and allocate them to what Alec Boehm, a 6'5" third baseman, should do, which is hit 20-25, and it all evens out. You have to move on from this. And I'm saying it in a stretch in which he is swinging the bat well. I want to say this during a stretch where he's hitting 344 this month and not just pile on because it's easy. I respect this dude for that. He seems to hit rock bottom. He does a nice job of like responding from that. Like we talk about like where he's at, like his mental toughness is like his resilience or like his body language. Like, and people are very critical of that. We've talked about it on the show as well. I give him some credit. Like this dude has looked like he is absolutely crashed out twice in his career over the last 4 seasons here. And he picks himself up off the mat and like, this looks a little bit better now. And it's just, to me, it's not good enough. It's not good enough here. You cannot have a third baseman. You cannot have a third baseman who has 145 at bats and has 1 home run. It's a joke.
In a minor league ballpark, by the way.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Opposite
field, but it was minor league ballpark.
Man.
Well, Bob, they got the Cardinals coming in.
I didn't know we were 57 minutes in.
I know. And I know the Cardinals have won, 8 in a row?
They're red hot. 8 of their last 10. And Libertor, who ripped up the Phillies back in St. Louis in April, he's on the hill.
Yeah.
Coming off of a good start against the hot-hitting Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah. I look at this team and I'm wondering how they've won 8 in a row.
Yeah, well, the Nationals were dreadful this weekend, so that helps.
I mean, I guess, Brendan Donovan's having a good year for them.
He is.
But aside from that, like, what's their offense? It's kind of just a bunch of mediocrity. Yeah. I mean, it's not anybody that's like, it's nobody that's killing them. Like, they're a bunch of guys with OPSs in the 700s, and it's okay. It's just a lot of mediocrity. And then you look at their pitchers, and I guess you're getting Libertor, Gray, and Fetty are the 3 starters that are going to be coming in. Libertor's been pretty good for them. Sonny Gray is Sonny Gray. Eric Fetty doesn't impress me. Like
they kind of are what their record says they are, which is just a tick above 500. They're 10th in runs scored per game. Phillies are 9th, by the way. And then pitching runs allowed per game. They're tied for 13th with the Dodgers, actually. So it's not a bad team. It's a team that if you're not playing well, you're not executing, like they're going to go get you. But this is a team that, again, you probably should win another series here. And I know that the Phillies are not going to win every series, and they're probably going to have a letdown at some point, probably against a lesser opponent. I think that we might see that again in next week when they're out. And aren't they in Oakland next week, if I'm not mistaken, or wherever the hell?
Colorado first, and then the A's. So that brings this question from earlier. King Alfred's U.S. descendant said, with 3 at home versus St. Louis, 3 at home versus Pittsburgh, and 4 at Colorado, is an expectation of at least 7 wins over the next 10 games a realistic one? Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I think, the first 6, let's just tackle the homestand here. I think that you would expect 2 out of 3 against St. Louis, and I think Skeens throws this weekend.
Skeens, the Phillies will see Skeens on the final game of that series. I think it's Sunday.
Okay.
If everything stays lined up as they've been doing it.
And who would the Phillies then have if that's the case? That would be Suarez? No. It would be
whoever
throws tonight, right?
It'll be Suarez, Nola. Yeah, it's whoever throws.
So it's Sanchez.
Yes. Oh, no, it would be Wheeler. Because there's an off day this week. There's an off day this week, right?
Okay.
So because this week you go Sanchez, Luzardo, Nola. Then it's an off day, and then it would be. Oh no, I guess you're right. It would be Sanchez again. Yeah.
I mean, the Pirates have lost games in which Paul Skeens starts, so I'm not saying you have to chalk that up to as an automatic L. But that all being said, with him looming, I'll say that the Phillies probably don't sweep the series. There's probably a loss in there somewhere. So 4-2 homestand, probably, and then when you go out 4 to Colorado, you better win 3 of 4 out there. I mean, what are they, 7-33? The Rockies, they just fired Bud Black.
Yeah.
I mean, they suck. So you better find a way to win that series. And then you would expect them to win 2 out of 3 against the A's. So what's that tally up to? 9?
Well, no, we didn't count the A's in the next.
Okay.
He only did the next 10.
Okay. Oh, it stops with the Rockies. Yeah. So 7. Yeah. 2, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. 7.
Yeah, seven is very realistic. I think that they could even win an 8th out of that. I would not go any
Can
higher.
I give you something that I find to be really interesting? So, you know how when we get like towards the second half of the season, I start talking about playoff probability and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Baseball Reference right now. Okay. So the Mets this morning are 26-15. Phillies are 24-16. So they're one back in the loss column. I find this to be really interesting. Baseball Reference projects the Mets to win 96 games. That's their average simulation. They best case scenario have them as a 105 win team. Worst case scenario, an 87 win team. And their average simulation is 96 wins. The Phillies, 88.4 is their average expectation. So as Baseball Reference plays out its regular simulations, they have the Mets finishing 8 games ahead of the Phillies. What am I missing?
Yeah, I don't know.
And to take it a step further, postseason confidence, odds to make the playoffs, Mets 93.6%, Phillies 51.3%.
I guarantee you that changes just as soon as they change spots in the standings.
I mean, it's just crazy. Now, from the betting standpoint, the Mets actually are favored, by the way, to win the NL East right now. It's short. And I think the Phillies are plus 125, I'm looking at, and Mets are minus 155. There's some value on the Phillies here, I think. I mean, the Mets starting pitching, it's actually like almost unbelievable. And I give Stearns a lot of credit. I give that, I think that organization is one now that has people in place that is going to get the most out of its players. Like, I don't think it's an anomaly to see like mediocre players probably meet or exceed expectations more often than not. But like, I just keep coming back to this starting staff. Like, listen to these ERAs. Senga, 1.16. Peterson, 3.05. Griffin Canning, who is just a guy or has been just a guy to this point in his career, 2.36. Clay Holmes, a reliever, converted starter, 2.74. And Tyler McGill, who we know, like, he stinks, but he's got a 3.10 ERA. Like, how can you have that many guys, all 4 of which are just kind of dudes, like just league average guys, all pitching above their heads like that?
Well, that's why I say there's going to be
voodoo magic is going on up in Queens.
That's why I think there's going to be the regression. It's just got to happen.
It's extraordinary. And in that park, it's like they're untouchable.
Yeah. They'll come back to earth. Those guys won't pitch like that all year.
You know, like the names that you're throwing out here with the Phillies, you're talking about like Sanchez, Luzardo, Wheeler. This is like stuff. Guys that, you know, even Nola, you know. Yeah. And I'm like, the names I just rattled off here, like, what on earth?
Nah, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. So anyway, I think the Phillies take 2 of 3 from the Cardinals. That's my official prediction, trying to get back on track with my picks. And then we'll see what happens as we head into the weekend for the Pirates and Paul Skeens. Pirates stink. They're terrible. What an embarrassing organization they are. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Phillies facing probably 2 of the more embarrassing organizations. Well, 3 in a row as far as owners. Although I do like what the A's, like I said, I think the A's are an exciting team, and it'll be fun to watch them play the Phillies next week. But as far as owners go, their owner sucks too. So 3 bad owners in a row. The Phillies get Pirates, Rockies, A's. So that'd be fun.
Yeah.
So, all right, Bob, time for one last thing, and something we actually didn't really talk about, but we shared a couple of text exchanges about over the weekend. I just wanted to kind of get your take on how much Roki Sasaki has struggled for the Dodgers.
Yeah, he really has. The velocity's way down. He's not throwing 100 miles an hour. He's throwing 94 miles an hour. He's giving them some innings, but he's been very hittable. I love to see it personally. I am all about, and look, you just said that there are terrible ownership groups that don't spend, and those are the ones that should absolutely be just slammed and ripped apart. And the Dodgers are the total opposite. Like, I can't fault an ownership group for spending and being involved in everything. I know Sasaki wasn't a big money guy the way he came over, but I love to see bad things happen to the Dodgers. I guess it's a jealousy thing. I don't know, but I love it.
And he's really struggling against left-handed batters. Like they're killing him. They're freaking killing him. And his stuff is supposed to play down in the zone, and it's really not. He's up a lot. And then, of course, like you said, his velocity is not there. But really interesting comment that I wanted to share with you. I sent you the information from Lance's pitcher notes from Lance Brodzinski, right? Who used to work at Driveline, and he really kind of looks at all this stuff from a real analytical point. And he said one MLB analyst told him that Roki Sasaki is just Hurston Waldrop.
Okay.
I was like, wow. Like, could you miss that, Bailey? And look, a lot of teams were interested in this kid. Like, what did they not see, or what did they see that we're not seeing? Is it still there? Let's be honest. I mean, Yamamoto struggled a little bit more last year, and at the beginning, and then eventually he looked a lot better, and it's been a much better pitcher since. Maybe is it just that?
Yeah, I mean, there could be an acclimation process. There could just be adjusting to major league hitters. But the velocity drop is the biggest thing for me. I mean, like, the guy's not throwing 100 miles an hour, and that's what you thought you were getting. That's, I know that there's pitch shapes and, the cadence and your mixes and locate. There's more to it than just velocity. Like, you can get guys out throwing 94, 95 miles an hour, but when you think you're getting this premier electric arm and the guy's not throwing the ball like that, I think that causes a lot of concern. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. But
Dodgers, again, everyone's hurt. Guys are underperforming, and they're going to win 110 games in the best division in baseball. So
that isn't that the weirdest thing with the Dodgers? Like, as many people consider them like the gold standard organization in baseball because of how they spend and how good they are all the time. That guys on that team are constantly frigging hurt.
Always. I mean, that team has had just injury after injury and problem after problem, and they're 27-14 this morning.
Yeah.
15-3 at home.
Well, Freddie Freeman had a hell of a day yesterday.
Yeah.
Guys, he's ageless. We'll talk about a guy you can keep it, and that just to go full circle here. When you're thinking about a contract for a guy like Kyle Schwarber, for example, you say, "Well, is he going to still hit like that at 36?" Well, let's look at Freddie Freeman. Right?
Good point.
Look
Do you think
Freddie
if
Freeman.
the Braves could undo it, they would go have kept Freeman and never did Olsen? I mean, Olsen's been really good for them, but like, do you look at that and say, like, yeah, we'd like to have that one back?
Freddie Freeman's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Matt Olson's just a good hitter.
Yeah.
There's a difference. That's the difference between the two. Yeah. The Braves should never have gotten rid of Freeman.
Yeah. Braves too. Again, like, win a game, win 2 games in extra innings, then score 2 runs and lose. Like, they're just, they'll get going, but strange, man.
Yeah. Strange stuff.
All right. Well,
it's time to take it home. Yeah, so thanks. That's another episode of Phightin Words, episode 15 in the books for us. We'll be back on Friday to look at the Pirates series. Or actually, we might do a last time we did Thursday when there was that Thursday off day. Maybe we'll surprise everybody.
See how the schedule's looking.
See how the schedule's looking. See how the series goes against the Cardinals. See what happens this week. Maybe it's worth an early episode. But in the interim, if you want to subscribe to the show, please do on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. But the best place to get us is right here on YouTube. That's right. You can subscribe to Phightin Words on YouTube. Click the thumbs up, ring the bell. Make sure you don't ever miss a show. And for those of you listening in the podcast feed, you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@Phightin Words. So for Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony SanFilippo saying have a wonderful week ahead, folks. And we will talk to you again after the Cardinals series, either on Thursday or Friday. Have a great week.